Okay. All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
You're going to notice a momentary change in our sound.
Okay.
That's just this. Okay. Now you should be able to hear off the microphone.
I didn't catch any of that. It sound got a whole lot worse.
Or not. So you should be able to hear us off the TV station microphone.
Okay, yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Hassler, Alderwoman Cleghorn. Here. Alderwoman Johnson.
Here.
Alderman Donovan.
Here.
Alderman Jokerst.
Here.
Alderman Eidman.
Here.
Alderman Rainey.
Here.
Alderman Prince.
Here.
Alderwoman Armbruster. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Could I have approval of the amended agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That takes us down to the city administrator's report. Happy?
So I got reported for receipts. We the updated one. Also beyond the updated one, I've got another item to add. We now have an opening in our front office staff for another clerk. Lisa Kemper has been offered a new job with Lancaster Law Firm. She's going to take that job. Start after she's going to be with us till the 10th, and then she'll start the next week at the law. So we wish her the best of luck. So we are discussing moving Connie over to the utility building, which will leave us with an opening for another position. We had anticipated at the beginning of the budget year we would turn that into a full-time position. About the amount of time it's going to take to interview and get somebody in this office, we're probably just going to go ahead and hire at 40 hours instead of the 20 hours that we've had Connie work. So we'll see how this also transpires over the next few days, but that's our intention, is to put out an ad in the paper and start looking for another employee.
Happy was a change somewhere along the line when Lisa moved into from the department into us, but she was full-time.
Yeah. 27 years, I believe.
So I guess I wasn't aware that Connie was part.
Connie had come in after Megan had left.
Right.
And went to teach school. We were looking to see if we needed somebody full-time in that position. We didn't feel we did. But we found things that we could add on to her responsibilities and duties. A new person would also take over. And we see where there's a full-time need.
So you would have both positions full-time.
Yeah.
Part-time clerk and part-time court clerk, and then they did away with the state said that those two positions couldn't be combined, so she was full-time court clerk. But then we got rid of the court here, and she went to Alliance as the clerk there. So
Technically, she was our employee. She was just doing the utility billing. She had moved up front. Megan was doing utility billing. Lisa was just up in the front office to help with treasurer duties and whatever else that she was assigned. She took over the utilities because she was experienced in it when Megan left. And now that she's leaving, figured to pass it on to Connie.
Connie's that move.
Not yet. We've given her an offer of a letter of an offer if she has any questions about it. Any questions about my report? No? Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you. Takes us to staff report. Steve?
Bigger topics than what's in the report there, you can find the water plant project with the electrical panel change out. We finally got the electrical pole and the guide wires moved. The electric has now been buried underground, poles set, transformers are set, and now we are ready to proceed with doing the concrete work for the building. Contractor does not have all the materials yet. Doesn't look like we're going to have it for at least another month or so. Just a long lead time on the equipment. Water line project, they passed their samples. Bowman's tested the sample, sampled everything, pressure tested, everything passed. They began moving services over. Got a few more to do on the lower end of 4th Street, and then I'll have to come back and do the tie-in at Lecomte and the 2 tie-ins on Lehigh. Once those are complete, then they will go down and begin the creek crossing on Main Street Bridge. And they're not concerned with being on a time crunch either. Bob?
I noticed where they dug that stuff they cut. So that they have to go
To the right of way.
to all new taps.
Yes. All new taps, new service lines over to the right of way.
It text after I earlier today, the neighbors down there and taking care of that culvert.
No problem.
When we can, I want to get together and talk in detail about how those projects on Claymont are going to roll out, how that line that comes around and services those houses. I want to be able to talk to those people on the street, prep them for that, because I don't think we understand clearly how that's going to work as far as tearing back the surface to get to those lines. How far is it going to go into those yards? Is it going to impact driveways? So I just want to get with you with a drawing if we can, and maybe prepare some kind of material that I can pass out around that cul-de-sac. People will know.
No problem.
And one other concern, with the power being out at the water treatment plant and this proposed generator thing, would that have taken that, or the backup generator?
The water plant has a very large generator up there now. The only thing that didn't work on it is the transfer switch. It didn't switch automatic. So had to suit up, go in there, switch it manually, and then it powered the building just fine.
So you was down for just minutes.
Yeah. So, and that transfer switch is part of the electrical project. That's one of the components that keep continuously getting destroyed in there. As you see, it didn't work this time.
What's the best guess about getting the streets repaired? With the asphalt, where the cut has been made?
Oh, that's up to the contractor. Once the water line project is completely done, then they'll come back in and patch and then overlay.
Pretty dusty, I don't know if water that or what.
Yeah.
It gets pretty rough. Yeah, it got water today, yeah. It's probably got
Naturally.
going.
I can see if I can find you a better answer.
That'd be great.
Sure.
Thanks, Steve.
Anybody else? Yeah. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Steve. Chief Bennett?
Evening. You got my report there. It's not a tremendous amount on it. You'll see that we are down an officer. Officer Osborne left since the last meeting, and we're accepting applications now to fill his position. You know of anybody, send them our way. Anybody have anything specific? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any committee reports?
Parks is canceling the August 6th movie in the park. So the update there. With the summer activities and the heat waves, low turnouts for the summer. So we're just going to focus on September and October for the movies. So that's all.
Building committee met with Steve Bacon to engage him to start working on the city hall side of the building. He didn't have time to get us a contract. I was kind of hoping we might have one for this meeting, but I think, that's pushing it. But we sat down, talked for about a half an hour, went through the city hall side, kind of described what staff was looking at, what they'd like to see in individual offices, how we would put lighting in and HVAC. So we should be getting something back to vote on, I'd say in August.
So your contingency plan, whenever you have to move out, have you worked on that?
I've not yet. I'm still waiting to see if I get an engineer to draft the plans first, but yeah. I got some ideas.
Tents?
I was thinking like, maybe at the end of Virginia Street, there's some room down there.
That area.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is bad.
Yeah, we'll work on it. That's all I got.
A lot of holes down there.
Oh, yeah, it is. Right now.
All right, any public comments? Okay, that takes us to the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Review. I don't see any old, new, or other business. Does anyone have anything? All right. I haven't received any communication from the mayor.
I have, and he's having a great time.
I'm sorry, you broke up there. What was that?
I said, I have, and he's having a great time.
Oh, good. All right, so that takes us to the closed session.
Motion,
Anyone would like to make a motion?
motion to go into closed session. What all do I gotta say? For personnel matters.
So just go by the
Read
discuss matters as authorized, line
I find where it
3.
was because I wanted to shorten it.
Just personnel, though.
To discuss personnel matters as authorized by RSMO, section 610.021, hiring, firing, disciplinary, promoting, and employee performance records. That's not where it was.
Need a second?
Was there a second? I'm sorry.
Christie, second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Alderwoman Clegg-Harn?
Yes.
Alderwoman Johnson?
Yes?
Alderman Donovan?
Yes.
Alderman Jokers? Yes. Alderwoman Armbruster?
Yes.
Alderman Prince?
Yes.
Alderman Rainey?
Yes.
Alderman Eidman?
Yes.
Motion carries at 6:12.
Contact your office.
Turn those two on. Yeah, I turned them on.
What did you say?
We should provide snacks, beverages.
While you wait in the hallway?
Look at that, we got your bag.
That was 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Happy, did we have somebody come in late who wanted to speak?
Turn that one back.
I don't know, but it's quiet.
Microphone.
Yeah, they're back here.
So they were intending to be here for the regular session. They didn't know that it was going to be so fast. And public comments, they didn't know if you were going to do live.
We haven't ended the regular session.
Yeah, we haven't ended regular session, so we can accommodate.
Well, yeah, let's do it.
You need a motion to go back to public comments?
No, that's what came out.
No, if you want to follow Robert's rules of order, yes, you can. But I mean, I could just take the public comments and,
Yeah.
Consider making a motion.
unless you don't want to, you don't have to.
Can we have any public comments?
Did you turn the mic on, Ash?
Yes, let me double check it though.
Hi, my name is Lori Figgy. Can y'all hear me? Okay. All righty. I live on South Gabourey and have been at our residence for 17 years. The reason I am here tonight is to find out why the properties that I have spoken to a couple people on several occasions for some time now has not been taken care of. The house is on 7th Street. I do not know the address of it, which I'm sure everyone in this room knows the house that I'm talking about, and they also probably know who owns this house. The trailer that I'm talking about is located on a small area off of the St. John Casey Hall parking lot, which I'm sure everyone in this room knows the trailer that I'm talking about and also knows who owns that trailer. There is trash, broken cars, junk, tires, pallets, and I could go on and on about the mess and how it just keeps getting worse. There are vehicles parked on the property without license plates or expired plates. I was told that the vehicles had to have a valid license plates. We have purchased a house this past April on 7th Street, across from the White House on 7th Street, for a rental. The people in this White House have stole from us while we were working on this house. You ask how I know this? After my husband Rick noticed that things were missing one day, before he spoke, excuse me, let me back up. Rick noticed that things were missing from the day before. He spoke with the guy that lives in the White House, and Rick asked the guy if he had gotten into our dumpster that we were throwing all the debris in, and he said yes. He said that dumpsters are not private property and that anyone can go through them. Don't get that. So he threw items out of the dumpster and onto the ground that he didn't want. My husband asked about the other items that were missing, and he said he didn't take anything. We called the police, and they were on their way down, and I let the people know in the White House that the police were on their way down. The guy started bringing over a glass pipe. That was ours, and said that his wife had taken it by mistake. These are the kind of people that we're dealing with. We are also missing new storm windows that were made for a 1903 home that are going to be very hard to replace. But that's right, they didn't steal anything. What a joke. Okay. Everyone in the neighborhood wants this mess cleaned up. Okay, Ashley, would you mind? These are, let me hold on a second. I want to make sure I get them all in order here. Thank you. This is the first batch of photos I would like for everyone to look at. After speaking with a person at City Hall, they said that they would go down and speak with these people, letting them know what needs to be done regarding the issues. And they have so many weeks to comply, or they will get a summons to appear in court. I have spoken also to the police department about the issues also. To me, it looks as though these people either aren't talked to, or these people get their summons and nothing is done. Or they just don't show up for court and nothing is done. I still don't get it. The people in the White House burn things in a barrel in wee hours of the morning. I was told that the police department knows about this, but nothing has been done. I was also told that people that live in the White House are drug dealers, and nothing has been done. Why? You tell me. Also, a pedophile lives in the trailer. This makes me sick. If I start crying, I apologize. But it really does make me sick that someone like that lives so close to families in our neighborhood that have children and nothing gets done. I'm sorry. We have been trying to clean up this neighborhood for quite some time, starting with the railroad. I fought with these people and finally was able to get things taken care of. I really do not understand why it needs to be an ongoing struggle with the city to help us. There will be no money coming out of the city's pockets, none. Get the situation started and follow through with it, people. Also, a residential area, why do tractor trailers, why are they allowed to park here? We have the market that goes on Saturdays, and you have this trash that people come to the farmer's market and sees this stuff? Why are some neighborhoods in St. Genevieve taken care of and others forgotten about? Why aren't the landlords called into the situation and find them? There are several places in this town that are also like the two places that I am talking about, and they just keep getting worse. Sure, this. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I don't know if I got all those sent out, but which one are those, Ashley? Yeah, I gave the wrong ones out, but anyway. Okay, after speaking with, nope, that's the whole other one over here that I'm really screwing things up now. Did I lose my place? I do apologize. There it is.
Don't, we're not going anywhere.
I
We're not
know.
listening to you.
If I wouldn't have started crying, we'd probably already be through this, but okay. I apologize for that. Okay. The second batch of photos Thank you, Ashley. The second batch of photos, these are photos of the nasty trailer court on 10th Street. 2 trailers are lived in, and the others are not able to be occupied because of the condition that they are in. The owners live in New Jersey, the way I understand. They throw a blind eye to their property here in St. Genevieve. Third photo. Here you go, Ashley. You already have the fourth, so. Third photo. This is Dean Gamash's house on 9th Street. Look at the mess. All broken down cars. Why can this not be dealt with? Because I know people have come to you all and talked about it. Nothing gets done. The fourth batch of photos, which I gave to you by mistake first, I do apologize, is another one of Dean Gamash's houses on Market Street. He has started trashing this place also. This is in the city limits, and you all let it keep getting worse. Do you want St. Genevieve to keep going down the path of neglect? I'm assuming if these neighborhoods were down in the historic district, things would be taken care of and not at a slow pace. We are a national park town that people from everywhere comes to visit. Can you imagine the things that people say when they see things like this? They don't turn an eye when they see these things. Also, we have asked about our street being paved, potholes being filled. Nothing. It's in dire need. And you know, don't throw the asphalt in the holes and go on. We are people too. We pay taxes just like everybody else, except these people that get by with all this crap. And you all know it's true. It's going to get worse and worse. Drug dealers, pedophiles, trash. Can I get an answer at all from anybody? Seriously, why? Why can people like us, normal people like you all, why can't we get help? Why do they just keep trashing our neighborhoods? People talk to them. They go to court, slap on the wrist, nothing. $25 fine, nothing. We have to drive by it. Would you want to drive by it?
Do you have any other public comments?
Nope.
All right, any other business? I apologize, the sound in the video froze up there for a moment. Was there anything else?
I guess stop me if I'm wrong. You know, issues with nuisances. I mean, I'm embarrassed, but I think as a city and as a group, we need to take a hard look. I wouldn't mind being known for a city with the strictest policies, whatever they may be. I think we owe it to everybody to do that and do it as a priority.
Well, we're not getting too many because it's not an agenda item now. We're in the process of looking at the nuisance ordinances and updating them, so I expect that's maybe on the next meeting agenda. You can discuss those issues at that time as an agenda item. Because they do have to be updated, and they've already provided me with proposed changes, and I'm redlining them, so I got that yesterday afternoon and another one today, so the city's working on it.
With that, I know there was a bill that was brought before, a couple years ago maybe, related to some of this and the number of vehicles that could be parked and things like that. Could we get, without going into discussion, what I'm asking for is, I don't remember the language of that. I think it was actually right before I joined the board. So I was wondering if that's not necessarily worked into the nuisance ordinances that are being worked on now, is if we could maybe get a copy of that, what that language was before for future meetings.
Do you have it somewhere? Because I know I have it somewhere in my database. I assume you were here for that, or was that?
No, that was before I got here.
Yeah.
But we can bring that.
If you can't find it, I'm sure
David's got it.
Mr. Boga has it. So. Yeah.
You know, but there's way more than just this.
Well, we can talk about it next meeting, because there are certain limitations of what the government can do to a private property owner. It's not about beauty. Generally, it's about safety. And so there's some limitations to what the city can or can't do. But we can talk about that in the next meeting, and there's different approaches, but we'll put that on the agenda. We'll have a more thorough discussion. I can be prepared to give you a whole bunch of options and talk about how the legislature has limited us and how we can do our municipal court prosecutions, and have a full discussion on it.
So public comment, we can't respond. I can't do this, but I'd like to talk to you after this. So I can't do that, so.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no further business, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting and move into our work session. Session to order. Can I have an approval of the agenda?
Motion, did you?
Jim, motion.
Okay, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, happy?
Okay, just looking for some guidance. I don't want this to sit on my circular table in the office without at least bringing it forward every now and then to say, what do we want to do? So this is the preventive pavement maintenance plan, the PPMP from Cochrane. You were presented what Dave Christensen believed needed to be the number every year. We were close to $1 million every year. The board looked at what our budget is, which runs between $200,000 and $250,000, and went, that's a problem. So do we want him to finish it up as the larger amount, so we get a 15-year plan and then work towards getting funding for that, whether it's bonding or robbing banks or some other...
Mega Million tickets.
No, can't raise money that way. That'll get you in trouble.
But we can rob banks.
No, well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but we can rob banks.
Mark left, right?
So Happy, how does that proposal affect, we talked about the fact that we needed to maybe budget for a crack filler and some saws and stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, are these two things achievable in the same budget year, or would we benefit if we said, hey, we need to hold off on PPMP as a cost-saving measure until X year, because before that we want to buy crack filler, any tooling that Steve may need, and follow-up question, does Steve have those items in his budget for this year?
No, I think we were going to look at those amounts. So we have not added those in yet into our total.
Okay, I recommend that they get added and we could evaluate it with those numbers for what it's worth.
Right, but are we going to look at the plan where you divide up, you're going to be dividing every neighborhood, so there's 15 neighborhoods. Are you going to divide those up into fourths? So we're doing just, a quarter every year? Or do you want them to finish it up as it looks? We can still get the equipment that we need to properly maintain, but you're still looking at needing to figure out, how do you want us to proceed on paving the streets, or do you want us to keep doing it the way we're doing it, which is evaluating. We'll bring 8 or 9 streets to you this year. Once we figure out what the square footage is, I can give you a cost. We may be able to add more streets, we'll see. But that's the way we've been doing it, is just picking the worst of the worst and fixing those, and then the same thing the next year, same thing the next year. So the preventive plan is, this is how you get a whole neighborhood fixed, and then you rotate through the 15 years, and then you're back to keeping the streets in good shape because you've been able to maintain them over that length of time too.
Well, with the cost difference we're looking at between what we've had to spend and what they're projecting we need and stuff, it's a big gap, but I don't know, I know we've talked about a crack filler, but, it's not just a little push around thing. You
Right.
have the whole 9 yards, and
Right.
how much is that?
I wouldn't even know to start. I'd look it up.
Are we on the hook for the whole contract amount if we say,
No, but I think you lose the benefit of just even
Right.
doing it if you don't finish it. And then, yeah, it may sit on the shelf, but we can update it at some point too. If you want it just to sit there as an unfinished product.
that's what I was afraid of all the way from day one, but
Well, but I think it's also brought to light the issue, and this board is very concerned about the way the streets are and want to try to do something to make them better.
Well, and also just having the plan for maintenance on the streets, even if we're only able to do 5 to 10 streets or whatever a year, having a scheduled plan for maintaining those properly over time that we stick to in changing hands of positions and things.
Now, we also could look at the crack sealing part of it. Some of it's paving, depending upon how deep we need to get into the paving, that was part of it. But there was also the crack filling. It had a schedule on there as well. And that's something that Public Works can then follow every year and say, this is the neighborhood that we need to do the crack filling, and we just follow that. And so we've got something to base our budget by.
I mean, didn't we do crack filling on Progress Parkway a year or two ago?
Last year, and they got halfway through, and because we borrowed it from the county. And it just took so long that we had to get into another project.
Right.
So
My point by that is I hate to, well, if you can, but I think we need to be autonomous here in the city on that level, and I hate to commit funds knowing that it may keep us from buying implements that we need. I'd rather buy the implements we need and then keep this and say, okay, once we have what we need and we're whole in-house, then we pursue a program.
Well, from what I've seen of those things, they can't be cheap. I mean, it's not a $20,000 machine. It's more than that.
probably between 100 and 200,000.
Yeah. So there again.
Enough to impact this program coming on.
But
Even though this is the Cadillac that we all want and we all
Yeah,
need.
and I don't see an easy way out.
But at the same time, doing, not having a plan going forward, the streets that we're doing just risk deteriorating further if we're not taking preventative steps with the crack sealing and stuff. So I don't think our option is just to stop or get a plan just to throw on the shelf. We need to be proactive and
We need
doing what we can, even if it's little means.
We have to be proactive in every dollar we spend. That's the whole. That should be our whole goal and stuff, regardless if it's crack filling or what it is. I mean, we got to get the biggest bang of our buck for everything. Be fair, be realistic, and be cost effective. It's not reinventing the wheel.
No, but I think doing what we need to do, or what's within our means, even if it's throwing all of our resources towards it. I mean, streets is one of the biggest complaints from constituents and all. So, as much as I want to see stuff happen up in the park, if it means that we've got to, we can't throw money towards a park on that, then so we can get another street or buy a piece of equipment,
How firm are we that we have $7 million at our disposal to tackle that? Do we know that? That's what I'm saying. We can go out. Are we saying we can go out and assume some new debt for $7 million and get halfway to 15 years?
We can review it. I can bring somebody in to look at it again. But that was a year and a half ago, because I know people. And they were just doing it as a courtesy to say, here, looks like your debt load and your debt limit, because you can do 10% of whatever your valuated assets are, and it divides it up between water and streets. They're all separate, so there's separate piles that you can do. You can't do everything for that one. So I limited it to about $7 million.
That's just my interpretation of the last bullet on this recommendation. Is it seems to suggest, hey, we can go get $7 million somehow, and we can satisfy between 7 and 9 years of the plan.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, though, the only way to pay for that bonding is through a tax increase.
You have to have some form of income to pay for it, yes.
Strictly dedicated to paying that back.
Depends on the type of funding that you do, whether it's strictly a tax that's for a general obligation bank. It depends on what you look for in the way of funding. We haven't pursued the individual types, and there's not a lot of them. But for streets, I believe you have to go general fund or general obligation. You don't go revenue, because there is no revenue from the street department, or you go with a certificates of participation, which is just on the good faith and credit of the city. Your interest rate, though, is higher, so you end up paying more over the long term. Whereas if you have a tax that is dedicated to help pay for it, then it's less, because you have a tax that's dedicated to pay for it, and those that buy those bonds feel more comfortable or safer that it will be paid off. Whereas with a certificate of participation, there is a chance that you might not. Because if you don't allocate for it when we do the budget, that, yeah, you're not paying your debts, but that's the potential. And we have certificates of participation now that we have for, I think, water, sewer. Because we have lease purchase, I think, on the equipment, but we have some certificates that we're also paying at this point out of water and sewer. And I think the street may be part of that too.
I just, going back to the fact of the water tower, luckily the county picked that up for 5 years because we weren't in a position, to pay for a water tower that's our water tower that they generously jumped in, till we get some other things paid for. But I don't know, there's just a lot of needs. And actually, I'm not arguing the fact streets aren't important. They are. It's huge, from, maintenance on our own vehicles and stuff that drive on them every day to people's perception of it, to move into town or be part of, the city. But it's just a huge number.
And I don't think you don't think they're important or anything like that. I just don't want us to be like, well, there's nothing else we can do now and not have a plan and then keep picking streets all willy-nilly like we do. I mean, we have some logic to them with picking the worst ones, but
right.
you're driving trucks over them to get to the other ones and things like that. So, or, we come up with a project later on that we've got to dig up this street now and things like that. So having a plan to move forward, even if it's we can only tackle a little bit at a time, it's only going to benefit a future board. We might not see the benefit of it, but a board 10 years from now might thank us, for starting today to do what we could, because we're in the position we are now because future board or previous boards didn't take enough action. Maintenance went subpar. And so it's doing what we can now.
I just had a lot of faith in the changes we've made in public works and stuff, that we wouldn't have to go out and spend additional money on engineering firms to devise a plan and stuff. I just felt we were on the right track. And
I think we contract if we don't have the capacity to do it in-house, and maybe we need to back up. Maybe we need to back up and say, hey, do we have that capacity? Maybe we don't. That's not an answer question.
You mean to physically do the work? I don't.
Yeah.
We did many years ago and
we don't
stuff.
Have that. I think that's true. We don't have that.
Yeah, I don't think we want to go back to.
And this is tied, again, maybe my interpretation of that last bullet's not correct, but that's tied to a ballot issue, a voter issue. Like, if we're going to levy a tax, we're not going to do that without a public vote, right?
We can't.
So, I mean,
Yeah, it has to be voted.
so that bullet is open to that. Like, we're not in charge of that on our own here.
You'd be okay with levying an additional tax with everything that's going on in anybody right now? I'm not.
I'd be okay with asking the public, hey, are you okay with it? Because what do you guys want us to do?
I'm not even going to recommend it.
Well, I
don't want my name in recommending it and stuff, because we're burdened the people.
Would this be a property tax or a sales tax?
I would recommend a sales tax, based on what I see as our revenue off sales.
And we have the highest sales tax rate in the state of Missouri right now, and it can't happen.
True. I don't even think we're there yet. I think this is a more specific conversation with the public, like a town hall of some sort, to say, here's where we're at, this is the current state.
We're looking at 9.1% inflation month to date. Guys, where's that going to come from?
No, I
don't think we're
hear
even
you,
there
but let's don't exclude the public from weighing on that. And they may all feel like you, and they probably do.
Yeah, I hope so.
But we need to hear that.
So one other option is that, I don't know when the water tower gets paid off. That is a capital improvement
It was
tax.
5 years at the time, wasn't it, Joe?
Well, the complete project is paid off in 10 years. The county does the first 5. We pick it up when the firehouse goes off.
Right, so that's 2025, so you have another 5 years, and then you'll have that, unless you buy something else to dedicate it, you would have that money to then work on streets, because it's for capital improvement. So that runs to about $350,000 a year, plus if you take the $250 that's in your street budget, then you're getting closer to having it every year. Then you don't have to do anything else. You've already got a tax that's in place. And I think that's been some of the discussion too, is like, well, there are a number of taxes. Is there one that can be, levied, or not levied, but, used again, used for that? It's like, not for us at this point.
Out of the 9.225% sales tax now that's collected in the city of St. Genevieve, and a lot of people don't realize this, 4.225% of that goes directly to the state for different, however they divide it up. That remaining 5%, guess who gets the biggest piece of it? Not us. The county gets 3%, we get 2%. Now I don't know how, I know how they got their last 1.5% by public vote, for 3 different entities and stuff. I don't know how the original first 1.5% they got before the 3 additionals, but I've asked Happy's looking into these numbers and stuff, is how much of the sales tax that we generate in this county is generated right here in the city. A bigger portion of it, biggest portion of it. So, but that's another whole subject. But
I mean, to say that the city's tax rate is 9 point whatever is misleading. The county's tax rate is a certain amount, and then when you add the city's part, what the county's only 8 something, aren't they?
Just subtract 2%.
Yeah, so
That's 4.225 plus 3% for the county.
When we talk about the city tax rate, we can't say it's 9 point whatever. That's the county tax rate with, I get that, but people think that the city's bringing in that 9 point whatever percent.
right, they don't understand.
It's still the county state tax rate with our 2% put on it. I mean,
right, but what the county collects, we get nothing out of. But we collect the biggest percentage of theirs are sold in the city. I mean, there's an imbalance there that's out of whack, I think, but that's just more reason we can't increase the burden. We're going to incentivize people to not buy here.
well, that's been happening for years.
Yeah, plain and simple.
Are you also saying, though, in a very general sense, that we could have a discussion with the county at some level, just general terms, like, hey, we are in the county, so these are county and city streets. Could we have a discussion about what kind of relief we might find?
Well, they've already gave us some relief, and you already mentioned it. They're paying for the first 5 years of the water tower.
No,
they've helped out on a lot of stuff.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, you're asking for maybe the county upping their sales tax to benefit us.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I'm opposed to that or whatever. Of course, that's not in my hands, but I'm saying if you seem to think maybe that we're leaking money somewhere. And like, could we have a discussion with, can we just have a discussion?
Yeah,
How
just
would
in that, we are part of the county, that is
Right.
correct. But out of the sales tax we collect, they get the biggest portion.
So how
Why
can we?
can't that be in balance, and
Yeah.
something that, and I'm waiting for the numbers back and stuff, but.
Check your email.
What?
Check your email. Have you checked your email?
No, ma'am, sorry.
Check your email.
Well, I mean,
Sorry, forgot that.
I don't like the insinuation that they're not
Sorry.
No,
They're not
and I
giving
don't.
nothing back to us. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm not
they're-
insinuating.
They've helped us with roads, they've helped us with the water tower. I mean, they've been playing very nice, and I don't want it to look like they're not doing anything to help us. They've
I'm not
I
either
fully
and
agree with
stuff. I'm
Joe.
just,
Yeah.
And part of your transportation budget is a county road tax that we do get a portion of. So there is money that comes in from the county for that. That's that overall budget, that's what helps pay for that.
I'm strictly looking for a way to put this plan into works without beating up the taxpayer.
I hear you.
That's it. No underlying stories,
Yep,
no nothing.
I hear you.
I just,
Okay.
Okay.
I don't want that survey or that study that Cochran did for us sitting on there collecting dust. I want better streets, but
And you gotta look what we've done in the last 8 years, 7, 8 years. We've gotten a lot of streets done. And people forget about them once we do them. We got half of Market Street done. I mean, there's all kinds of streets we have gotten done.
Ridgeway.
And, you know, we may not have gotten to their streets yet, but we've tackled more streets in the past probably 6 to 8 years than we did in the previous 12. I mean, that's without a doubt, you know. And we're playing major catch-up, and we haven't hit a lot of areas. I mean, we hit all around Lynn Drive, but none of the connector streets, you know, and they're just as bad. We got areas all over town that are, but the main thoroughfares we've been attacking and trying to get as much as we can. And people, once they're paved, people seem to forget that, you know, we just had a major expense, you know, Cherry Street, I mean, we've hit a little bit everywhere.
Park.
Main Street,
Yeah.
same, we've done a lot in a lot of areas. We just haven't gotten everything yet. And I think the plan that we've been doing has been working great with what we've had. I mean, we've gotten quite a bit done.
I think it's what we can afford, is what we're doing.
But if there's a way to better strategize the streets, to group them together,
Well,
you know, that would save us in the long run.
But the
then
problem
we
with
need to
that
look at that.
strategy is something could happen that throws that whole strategy out the window within a year or two, and our priorities change. You know, a flood could do that. We noticed that in '93. I mean, our infrastructure took a severe hit in '93. All those Corps of Engineer trucks and everything coming all over town. Then again in '95. Having a plan, I mean, I kind of like what we've been doing. You know, years past, Gary would present us a list. We'd look at it and pick the worst ones, and then the following year, Gary, give us another list. What you think? You know, Steve's on top of things. He went through and patched a lot of them last week. Is it what I'd like to do? I'd like to do more, but we're trying to stay on top of it, and we're being very proactive in a lot of areas now that we never have.
I just feel like a kid in a candy store now and stuff, and I want every piece of candy and stuff, but I can't have it.
But, I mean,
You know, so what?
I like having a plan, but having one that there's no way we can afford doesn't do us any good. Because all our little projects could turn into big projects overnight that throw that plan out the window, and it's going to sit on the desk anyway.
I think that's with anything. You always have the potential that something's going to happen, but it's nice to have that. It's the same as our supervised plan for water mains. Something could happen to a water main, and we would, you know, fall away from that supervised plan. But now we've got it in hand, and we're getting ARPA money to help pay for that.
Yeah, because I guess I just view this plan a little bit differently in that, like, it feels like all we're seeing is, you know, the 15 years or whatever that it's laid out for, but we're not seeing the ways that we could speed it up or slow it down, right? So what if we stretch this out to a 20-year plan or a 25-year plan, but we have it mapped out in ways that, okay, when we do get extra money, we do find extra money, we tackle the next year plan earlier. Or, okay, we don't have those funds this year, so we delay this plan by a year, or we get offset by a project.
Each time we delay it, we would have to have it revised every year and updated based off anything that happened in that year. Hey, we need you to reopen this and look at it, because what you gave us last year is already obsolete. So we're going to be paying to update it all the time. It's like our comprehensive plan in '97, which sat on the shelf, and there's still so many things in there that we haven't even got close to getting to. And
Why?
we're talking about doing another comprehensive plan that's going to sit on the shelf even, you know.
But, I mean, this plan's paid for though, right? I mean, like, we've already, to some extent.
We've just paid for the majority that we've got.
Yeah.
That we've got.
You're talking about this every year about revaluation and stuff like that costing more money yet. We haven't finished.
We're still working on our '97 plan. and it's so obsolete, but there's still a lot of stuff in there that we're just now getting around to talking about, like the Point Base or the Osler extension or whatever. There's an extension for Lynn Drive to meet St. Mary's Road. There's all kinds of things in that plan that we just have never looked at. And, having a plan or a scope is good, but when the end result is we can't afford it, I mean, there's really no point in doing it.
But sometimes a plan is, comprehensive plans are set in place that if something is developed in that area, then that would be part of what they would have to do for that subdivision. It isn't necessarily that the city's going to do it. It's that we know we want this done. That needs to be incorporated with your subdivision plan, and then, the board can then follow that. But the issue just comes down to, do we finish it? I don't want to scrap it, but, I don't want to do that. Or do we ask them to stretch it out? I would like to, if there is a possibility in future years, we can update it if we have enough money to pay for it. Then you pull it off the shelf, and it's like, okay, let's start doing this.
Well, to me, it's like, let's have a 15-year plan to add another story to this building. What's the point? We're kicking a plan down the road that we're never going to be able to accomplish.
The situation is here, we all agree there's a problem. None of us knows how to get there to solve it. We have differences of opinions of things, but we all want the same thing. So we're all right, but we're all wrong.
Here's the reason I would like to see a plan in place. And I'd maybe like to see it broken down maybe into some smaller, more manageable groups that we could potentially speed up or slow down as funding is found. But talking to my constituents in my neighborhood, an international subdivision, they just feel, kind of discarded because, 7 years ago, the board at the time told them that, I think it was Audubon Street, was going to get done. And they talked to the mayor, and the mayor promised them it was going to get done. It was printed in the Herald that it was going to be on the next budget. And I shouldn't say nobody's talked about it, but it's not made some of the lists that get presented to the board, things like that. Only half of Lynn Drive is supposed to get paved all the way around, right? It was supposed to be a two-phase thing. The other half of Lynn Drive has not been completed. It keeps getting pushed off, right? All of those streets in that neighborhood are like Scott Street, and I live on that street, so take it for what you will, but those potholes are layers deep. I can go bury roadkill in them, in the dirt. Right? There's no base under them. That's proper.
Jefferson Street,
Well, I'm not saying that's the only road, but I don't have those issues in Valley Springs. I don't have those issues growing up in Rozier subdivision. I don't see those issues to the degree downtown. Like, the streets in International are horrible. And there's streets up in Bob's area that are horrible. But they're just going to continue to get sidelined because we don't have a maintenance plan to maintain what we've got. Right? This plan, we might have to adjust it. And once we have a plan, I feel like future boards could make the adjustments. What we don't have right now is the resources to do, I know Bob's brought it up, I think that we could probably come up with a plan our own, right? But we don't have the resources, the time, right? Happy's got enough projects. Steve's got enough projects. So we don't have time to come up with a plan on our own for the entire street program. This gives us that we can adjust in the future. It needs to be more manageable, obviously, right? We can't shell out nearly $1 million every year, but there's ways Cochran can work around that, and it might just be a 25, 30-year plan. But what we're doing right now, it's not horrible, right? We're seeing changes, but those streets without proper maintenance, and if we're just driving right over them to get to the next streets, they're going to deteriorate way faster. And we're going to be in the same situation 20 years from now.
It's a
if not
shame.
worse.
It's a shame we can't do a smaller, more targeted pilot program. Is that even a possibility? I mean, I know it affects pricing, but could we not say, hey, we need to scale this down and just do a smaller, not the entire sitting, but maybe pick a targeted grouping? I'm just trying to think outside the box.
I'm not sure what you're thinking.
Meaning, I know you lose some volume pricing if you only look at, like we're looking at a list that goes through 27 and it lists out all the streets.
Right.
Can we not just pick a section of these and say, hey, we want to,
Then you're doing the same thing we're doing.
Exactly.
yeah, but we're able to do it with, we're able to do it with a contractor that has more resources, I guess. I don't know. It's perplexing because we all want this pavement program, but we can't pay for it.
I had another term other than perplexing, but I can't.
Absolutely. Agree with you, Bob.
But if we price it out, that's the other thing, is if you look at what these costs are, going forward, we'll know what the costs are for the work that we're going to have to do on some of these streets. So we don't have that. We only got 5 years worth, and I think you got 15 different neighborhoods. At least you can get a price on that, and then you know what we would know going forward, what those amounts might be to do some major repair on the streets. Right now, we're just estimating based on square footage and doing an overlay. And that's not going to happen for Audubon, Scott, and LaRose in that neighborhood. We're probably going to have to do a major repair, full depth repair, and that's going to be expensive. And this is going to have that price.
And it's going to have something that can say to my constituents, hey, according to this plan, it's not going to be feasible in these next few years, but if we can gather some resources, we can potentially tackle it, year 6, year 7, whatever it is. But unless we have a plan, all I can tell just today I was talking about streets with one of my constituents, and so I couldn't give her much of an update except for we're talking about it and trying to get this plan together, see what our resources are, and find solutions. But they want to know a date, and I can't get that to them, and I'm not even having a plan. I'm not going to be able to give them a firm date, but at least they have something to hold us or future boards to account. Because they just feel, just like Lori said earlier, they just feel like they're tossed around, right? Because this board makes a decision and they say, yeah, that we'll get to that 3 years from now. But 3 years from now, this board can look completely different. And that board might not have, if Happy weren't here, he might not be able to, they might not have that knowledge of what this board had decided 3 years prior.
Happy this, I know we touched on it a little bit. The city of Perryville has a different program, where footage is based off your property and you pay
My discussions are the same thing that we do. They maintain the streets, and unless there's, subdivision.
Yeah, but I thought there was I've heard, I don't know what it is or it really exists and stuff, but there is a pass-along program that basically, per foot of your property that borders that street, you pay a portion of the cost when that street is and it may be to the point, it might just be completely rebuilt or something. I don't know that there's any paving, but they have a program.
They're almost all concrete down there.
Well, I know, but I don't care what it is, concrete, asphalt and stuff, but if there's a program, that maybe we could put into effect as far as to be able to assist with funding of this, it says, just like we did with the sidewalks, you pay X number of dollars per foot of your property and you get a new street. And it's firm policy down there, and you just have to, it was voted in years ago and stuff, but I'd really like to know what that program is and if it is indeed there and if it works. Well, they keep doing stuff, but I think it's different than other cities.
Yeah, in my discussions with Brent Bjork, their city administrator, their program runs the same as every other city. I mean, they're responsible for it, yeah. I have not gotten into or understood that part of the project, or that I have not understood that that's how they do that. That's how they pay for it. I don't know, though, that because if you're going to walk in and say, we're going to do this, you're going to have to force people to do it, to pay for it. Otherwise, if it's voluntary, you're going to be, mishmash as to how that works. So that's why I don't think that's a viable plan, but I'll check.
Yeah, if it would be
I think
trouble
that
to
was
get
only
it
on the
clarified.
square, though. I think, wasn't that only
Or I
on
thought it was a
redeveloping
specific
the square?
sidewalk that, I thought it was tied to
I don't know, I've heard that for
situation.
years, that they have a program in place, and I don't know anybody that done it, but
Because I thought I had heard something similar to like some sidewalks or pathways that they were wanting to put in.
Because if it was voluntary, it'd be the same as our sidewalks. We have had a couple of inquiries, but we have had no takers on our stipend that we would give to homeowners who replace sections of their sidewalk.
I mean, I'm sure that would be hard to enforce. It says, your street's next, here's the bill.
Yeah.
But
So
I don't know,
how-
I've just heard it for years, and maybe it's nothing.
How we drive to your recommendation on the staff report then is to go back to you and say, hey, how would we pay for it? Like what are the methods by which we would pay for it? Can you do a deeper dive on that, on options? And then I think fight for some public feedback, like,
No, the question is, do we sit on it unfinished, or are we going to finish it?
I think
If you're asking for, it sounds like you're asking for a little more information on the funding part of it.
I am,
Which would
absolutely.
be a separate piece than the plan itself. He outlined how you could do it in the plan.
I think we move forward by going with the plan, but breaking it down
Other
into more
proposition.
manageable groups, more affordable groups that we could potentially speed up or slow down.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Right?
That's, again, it's do you want a plan that you can eventually get to, or you want a plan that we can maybe focus on over the next few years? It will not be his recommendation, but it is what is affordable according to our budget.
But we signed a contract with them, so we're bound.
Well, I mean, I'd like to finish it. I don't want to just leave it
Right.
sitting on the table, 'cause I just think that's a waste of money that we've spent to this point. Let's finish it. And then if it's done, then if we want to make a change in 10 years, make a change in 10 years. Maybe by then, a bucket of money falls into our lap again, and you can redo all the streets, or you've got something that, again, when we pay off the water tower, there'll be some revenue that'll be there. Now, whether you dedicate it for something else, I can't say. And see, I can't say what the board 5 years from now is going to say.
10 years or 15.
But it's like maybe if like group, market group is broken down into two groups, well, we can do market group phase 1 this year, market group phase 2 the following year or something, right? And then we can move on to Washington group or Lynn group and break that down into phases, right? So if it's in a more manageable thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're still hop, skip, and jumping around the town. It's
20 years.
It's that we're working strategically with the roads that we're picking.
20 years.
Yeah.
So it's
Water
15
tower's
years.
20 years.
20 years.
And it's 2026 is when we start.
You can start paying for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go buy a measurement.
So that's my recommendation is move forward with the plan, but see about breaking it down into smaller groups that are manageable.
I'd support that.
I agree.
Yes, smaller group, or smaller amounts, I will work on that.
Smaller.
Smaller
Well, I
group.
mean, what we're putting on average, we can maybe do $250,000 a year safely.
$250,000 more.
No, we put about $250,000 a year for the last couple of years towards streets, so we can feel comfortable in doing that. Now, if we come into more money and say like $350,000 one year, then maybe we start tackling the next year's project a little sooner.
Do you see more money coming our way?
I don't see a lot of things. I mean, I don't know. What I can tell you is the reason he picks the numbers that he does is because you're going to chase your tail by making it smaller, but we're just basing it on what our budget is. I don't know. There may be something that, you may get another taxing entity, let's say like a Walmart or something, that suddenly brings a lot of people in. Yeah, you may have a rush on sales tax that would increase what our income is.
Now, but we're picking these streets randomly, so it's not getting us
It's
anywhere.
not random, I mean, we
No, we haven't.
It's the worst of the worst, so it's not that doing this one street here, but not doing the others, and then 7 years from now, finally getting to one of the other streets next to it, and we're driving all these big trucks over it, deteriorating faster because we don't have a maintenance plan.
What if the main plan puts that same street off to the same period of time anyway?
There's no saving grace there and stuff. I mean, I don't care who looks at it, whether Cochran looks at it.
We're
or-
looking at doing a 15-year plan, and their suggestion is $1 million a year, and we're offering to do $250,000 a year, so we might as well take that 15-year plan and multiply it by 4, and it becomes a 60-year plan.
And in the meantime, 20 years down the road, the first streets you've done have already increased.
But how long is our plan right now, right? How long is it going to take to tackle those streets now?
You know, that would
120
be
years?
interesting to know how many miles of streets we have and how many miles of streets we've paved in the last 3 or 4 years.
So we have 33 miles of streets. I don't know how many we paved.
Only 32?
33.
Don't short us by 33,
You think?
not 32.
Not a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know that. I know the first number. I don't know the second number. And when do you want, I mean, if we look at what those amounts are, where do you want to start that count? Where do we start figuring the streets have been done and try to come up with that mileage?
It's too many variables.
Which is why
I know.
It's giving me a headache.
that's why you outsource when you say things like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's just like there's not a starting and stopping point on collecting the data for what we've been doing.
Okay, we're going to move on.
It's the best idea yet.
All right, I need some guidance on budget because we are to the point of everything is done with the department heads. We have all of our line items fixed. We've got our totals for the departments, and so we are working out our numbers. So some discussion needs to take place about employee raises, health insurance, some low-cost, no-cost additions for employees, added employees. So this comes into play as to what our deficit is, and the intention to move into the 100,000 of the 225,000 left of the TIF money into capital projects. So I'm going to start with employee raises. We're looking at cost of living. At this point, it is predicted that Social Security will go up 8%. And so by the end of the year, you're looking at an 8% increase for COLA. Whether you want that to be reflected in the budget or not is up to you. So the other idea is that a dollar increase would bring the lower end up faster, the higher end would not move up as fast. So you'd have more than 8% on the bottom end, you'd have less than 8% on the top end. And the reason I put that in there is, at this point, after working through the numbers this weekend, with the 8% raise, we're in a general fund deficit of $388,946. Of the 50% that we have to keep for the emergency funds, we're that far down, $388,000. That's the funds that we start picking capital projects, police cars and that kind of stuff. If it is at $1, then we're at $163,620 in the general fund. So we're already negative, not surprising, because we've got a number of requests that have come through. We just haven't filtered through what those requests are yet, and what I'll recommend or not recommend. But it's a whole lot easier at $163,000 than it is at $388,000. And along with that, you've got some requests for, like the fire chief wants to go part-time salaried, and his request is at around $38,000. So that's a large chunk of that $163,000. So we're kind of making, we're looking at that. He can still bring it to you, but I may not bring it to you as approved, so that we can make that 50% mark that we've put into our policy. So do you want us to look at the 8% for employees, or $1, or do you want us to scale that back? I just didn't feel like bringing 3% to you to say that's the COLA raise would be appropriate based on what's going on in our economy.
Happy out of our taking into consideration all of our income and all of our fixed expenses. So how much spendable income does that usually leave us?
We are looking this year at, so you're just talking about like salaries, benefits, and the office supplies, that kind of stuff, the operational amount?
Anything that, insurance, gas for the police cars, fuel for, public service vehicles, any of those expenses that are truly, we have to have.
So that amount, so that figures into our 50%, the number that we're looking at. I believe the amount at this point, the difference, and I'm going to be off, I think we're about 66,000 in the green just for operational expenses based on revenue. And then the rest of it is capital improvements. So we dip into our revenues to cover our costs for the next year. We don't always spend it, but we have to cover that. So that's why you'll see, I'll give you one goofy number, but that's just because of the way it works out.
So you're saying we're $66,000 ahead?
Yeah.
And that is already figuring how much money we are going to spend on paving?
Paving doesn't have anything to do with this fund. So that's transportation. That's a separate fund.
No, I'm just looking overall, how much spendable income we have, because don't we normally just use that up in paving?
And that comes out of the transportation fund.
I understand that. Of all of the funds combined, of all the money we have to spend, by the time we pay all of our bills, which are just normal fixed bills, it seems like our paving is then decided about how much money we have after all of that's done. Is that not clear? Because that goes up and down.
Yeah, but it's based on what's in the transportation fund. So that's separate from general fund. That's one of our dedicated funds. So the money that we raise in sales tax goes directly to the street department for paving, and that's part of the capital fund or capital projects that we include in that, based on what revenue, what our balance is, what our revenue is expected to be, what our operational costs are, and then we put in capital amount for streets and whatever equipment we're buying.
I think what he's asking is like last year when you came to us and said, hey, we have 160,000 left, the words were used, left over to start tackling some streets. He's wanting to know what our number is for this year, or what our projected number is for this year, where you got that 160,000 last year, that surplus or whatever we called it, where we're looking at this year at being based off the early numbers that you're looking at. Is that what you're asking?
Well, but you're saying our paving only comes out of transportation tax funds.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it came out of that and general revenue, which that was part of general revenue.
You can take general revenue and use it for transportation, but we don't allocate that because we never have enough left in general fund.
So we just take in enough money to pay our bills, period.
More complicated than that, because you do have capital expenditures that are coming out of general fund for particular items, police cars, remodels, furniture, whatever, cameras, whatever we're buying. So, and also out of general fund is money for the parks to help fund that because it does not pay for itself. It does not generate enough tax revenue on the property tax to pay for the amount of work that we have to do in the parks. And the transportation fund is also a dedicated fund because that is a specific sales tax for that. As opposed to water and sewer, which are enterprise funds, which have to balance revenue with expenditures. But they're separate. You can't use water and transportation, can't use transportation and water, but we can use general fund and everything. So we did have money come out of ARPA funds that were general fund type expenditures, and that's what we paved Parkwood with. Plus, we had $198,000, I think it was the bid, to pave a number of streets in town, which will be done August, September. So this year we'll do the same thing. We'll look and see what we've got in the way of expenditures for equipment and then base that balance on what we want to pave in the streets.
Speaking of Parkwood out there and stuff, the next time we try to tackle a project like that, I had no idea, and somebody asked me, we're only doing those 2 little strips of concrete down through there? I thought we were going end to end. Well, I guess I didn't ask, but I'd like to have, a little more information on something like that, saying we're only doing a fourth of the street or something like that, but anyhow, just in the future if we do.
Generally, it will be listed on there what the cross streets are. So I think in that one we had listed Point Base to Parkwood, but when we estimated how much it was going to cost, it was over the amount we had allotted, so we had to pull it back.
Right.
We only did the 2 sections because they were the worst sections. The west side was fine, and that way we could get at least more length out of it than trying just to do the width.
No, I'm not questioning the decision you made. I just, a little more information up front would be helpful.
Yeah, but I think it's also that it just doesn't look as pretty as what some people would like for it to look at.
Well, the other last section that was replaced out there was property to property and almost and stuff, but because I drove around out there and I mean there's more stuff out there that's...
It's much more than a cosmetic issue, but I mean, that's not the purpose of what we're talking about right now, but I agree, it's not, it doesn't look pretty and it's not fully
functional.
Right, so getting our discussion back to, if we're going to talk employees, what do we want to include in our budget? This is something that's important for us so that Sue can put it into the numbers that I start putting into a spreadsheet that I bring to you in 2 weeks. So you can look at what we think the numbers are and then also what the capital requests are going to be. And then on August 18th, we go through all that.
Can you break that in your budget? Can you break it apart as a COLA and a merit increase? Because you've got a solid evaluation program now, so that's going to drive the merit increase, right?
Right, but we're going to go with the top end, assuming everybody's the perfect employee and they're going to get the full amount. So our number is going to reflect 8%, 7%, even if you've divided into 3.5 and 3.5 for 7%, it's going to be reflected the full amount because we're projecting into next year what we're going to do.
But it would also be helpful in the past, we've always known what that total dollar amount was. I don't know, when did we always seen that it was X number of dollars if we did a 3% increase so that we know what the bottom line is, more than just the dollar or the 8% or...
I mean, bringing individual amounts for everything, I think is getting... I mean, we could generate a number of different scenarios.
I get it, it's hard to forecast it at that granular level. I get that.
Why would it be?
I mean, we can put in any number of numbers, but...
My only question for that, though, is that number, that if you break it apart, COLA affects everybody. And we would argue, I already know we would argue, but COLA affects everybody. It affects the guy who's making 90 grand just as much as it affects the guy who's making 40 grand. But we won't have that argument.
You know my opinion on that. It's not the percentage, it's the fixed amount.
I do. But however, merit would be variable, meaning employee A and employee B have a different evaluation, which drives a different percentage in increase. So, again, it could be, this got me a couple times tonight already, it could be my interpretation of that first bullet. It looks like we would be locked into approval of some rate with those two combined.
So you're not actually, what you're doing is budgeting that maybe, it may not be spent. Sometimes we
Yeah,
don't spend.
budgeted and spent's different, I agree.
Right. So, but we have to set it for the expected amount so that we can give you an accurate number. And if we're going to say, well, 30% of the people are going to make, will not make the full performance raise, well, then are we putting an expectation on supervisors to not give a full performance or merit raise if they warrant it?
I agree.
I generally have not worked in that type, and I know there's industries that do that. You get 15% and you have 20 employees. You figure out how to divide that among your employees. I'm not, that's not the style of management that I like to do. So what I'm looking at is just trying to come up with a number, and we've done this in the last couple of years. It's like, here's what COLA is. How do you want to break this down? Is this amount okay, or is there something else you want us to look at? It's just this year, it's a large amount.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go with that number.
Security, some of the Social Security numbers from back in the 80s and stuff, it's double-digit stuff.
Well, seeing the raw number that results from what we're reading in bullet 1 is helpful. Can you wag that? You don't have any idea on what that number? 8% increase over today. That resulting number.
300 and something.
Oh, no, but that's based on what all of the amounts are, and that's all our capital expenses as well, the $388,000. So that's everything. So based on what the salaries show in our spreadsheet, and then what the capital expenses are.
Yeah.
So, but based on, I don't think we did a total.
What about that?
There's no total on
Yeah,
this.
we just didn't do a total.
Right. I mean, we have that info. We can get to it, but
Yeah, we just didn't pull up an info or a total on the bottom.
yeah.
We discuss everything.
I mean, I can get to that number.
So if you look at the difference between the numbers, it's going to be about, between the two amounts, it's going to be 200 or 100 and, no, 223,000, 225,000.
Okay.
That's the difference between one raise to the other.
I think that's the beginning of that, of evaluating that first bullet.
Right.
Is that number.
And the dollar, again, is just a figure. It can be 50 cents, it can be 75 cents, it can be $3 an hour, I don't care. Well, actually, I do, at $3, that would just be a little too bad. And I will, let me be upfront, this also affects me, but I don't care. I'm not advocating for myself. I'm advocating to what I need to put into the budget. So that is something that has to, because we don't do a separate contract for me here, I'm included with whatever the amount is. I don't like the fact that I have to advocate for it, but that's what I'm left to do.
Tough subject.
Yeah, that's why it's number one.
Well, I hate to jump ahead, but I do have a question to the health insurance part and because I think that should play a factor in this as well. So, okay. Newbie, help me. So when we're looking at this, and on here, it's talking about the cap it at the $300. So we would subtract the $300 simply from here, and that's what the employee would be responsible for?
So you're looking at what the employee would be responsible for employee cost, and you're capping that at 300.
Oh.
So they can't pay more than 300 for the
They
plan.
don't pay more than
They don't pay
300.
more than 300, right.
Okay.
we have our amounts already. Employees are all paid for, and then there's a percentage that the employees pay for. Right now, it's 20%, goes up to 30% next March.
And that's for spouse and dependent coverage. The employees covered 100%.
Okay, I understand.
Now, with that 300, was that recommendation from the alderman on the committee, or was that brought up by employee?
That was the recommendation from the committee.
That's what I got. Salary.
I mean, I understood it to be the committee's, the committee talked about it, but the board said, let's talk about it later.
Well,
This is later.
this.
I think Chief Bennett is the primary one that brought that up, but anyhow, it was discussed and stuff, but just as a footnote to that, and Jeff was there and Buck was there, not this past year when we discussed the insurance renewal and stuff, but the previous year, we had asked Lakeland Insurance, which employs Sonus, which is their benefit advisor, to survey the towns around us. And I think there were 6 towns around us. He gave us a written report on it and stuff. There were 6 towns, I think, 5 or 6. They all provide 100% employee, nothing dependent. So is there somewhere in between? And I think the $300 thing came from the county.
Yeah, so,
the county does, yeah.
Right.
yeah, so I double checked on that, and that is their policy.
Are county employees covered 100%?
It's the same as like we are, yeah.
Yeah, they're covered 100%.
Yeah,
So
employees
does this
pay-
all still dovetail into bullet 1, by the way?
Well, I think you got to take a bigger picture.
No.
I think you have to take a bigger picture too of your benefits, right? If you're going to go small on your raises, then maybe you make up for it in a different benefit way.
Right, now my OCD nerve is just twitching.
So I think there's a bigger picture here that they can kind of fall into, or even that last page with the no-cost benefits that can improve employee satisfaction, right? So you kind of take all that into account. So maybe if you can't do exactly what you would hope to do on one end, you can maybe make up for it in another.
And with the county, it's the traditional PPO plan that they cap at 300. If they're on the HSA plan, the county pays 100% of the premium, regardless of the type of coverage that they elect. Got it. So they're moving people to the HSA, but that's the incentive to get them there.
But we decided not to do that.
Right. We do pay, we'll pay into the HSA at this point if it's an employee only or whatever that difference is. If they have a dependent, if they're by themselves, we'll pay that money into the HSA that we would normally be paying as a PPO plan.
It's hard to compare the numbers.
I mean, I don't know, 8% is just a lot, but it sucks given the year that we're in, right?
We're at 9.1% right now. But
Man, I did not see that, so
what?
the 9.1%.
Yeah, it's just released, here shortly. We're at 9.1 at the end of
Because I mean,
July.
numbers wise with what you presented, I go out of these 2 choices, I lean towards the dollar, but it's tough, right? You don't want it to be,
But there's a little different swing to that now. Our lowest paid employees just came off our payroll.
True.
Isn't that correct?
Yeah, yes. Sorry, it took me a second. Yeah. Yeah.
And so out of these 2 options, the total number, you said there was like $150,000 difference, roughly?
Between the two, there's 200-some thousand.
200-some
It's
thousand
100
difference, right?
We're under 163,000 with the $1, we're under 388,000 with the 8%.
So, I mean, you're talking about a $200,000 difference just between these two here. I mean,
Yeah.
so out of these two here, I mean, numbers budget-wise, he leans it toward the dollar, but it's hard because you're dealing with people's lives in this economy too. But if you feel the current salaries are fair in most positions, the dollar's not the.
Well, but that's why there is a difference in salaries, that everybody doesn't make the same money. You know, that should be, for the most part, addressed. But I go back to my old part of it. Everybody's paying $4 now for a gallon of gas, whether you make the top or the bottom.
So are you advocating for an 8% raise?
Nope.
Throw out a number then. I mean, I'm not meaning to target you. I'm just saying our discussion's not going anywhere.
I've always liked a fixed amount, but that's just one opinion of me.
No, I mean, that's good.
The fixed amount is in like so much per hour for everybody?
I don't know what that amount is. I don't know. In my 67 years, I've seen more things at such a different time as what they are now. But, you know, inflation at a 40-plus year high, everything, 9.1% of everything. You know, and we keep hearing, you know, are we headed into a recession? I watched some things today of experts and stuff, and we're already in one. We just are not admitting it. So how deep does it go? How far does it go? And how do we want to position ourselves, the city, to be ahead of the game or worry about it when it happens? All of these things are very important to everybody, and how do you come up with a happy median?
So at a 4% split, you're saying COLA affects everybody, same.
Right.
And I've got another 4% upside. I can earn myself another 4%. I mean, I don't think that's a bad solution.
Budget-wise, you're looking at full 8% though.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
Yeah, so you're gonna have to budget 8% no matter what.
Right,
Yeah, I mean,
right,
if we're looking
right,
at budget numbers.
right. I agree with you.
I don't care how the percentage is broken up, it's just we gotta look at the overall budget number and make sure that we're willing to max that out,
Because we might.
because we very likely will.
Right.
So whether that's 8% split up, or 7% split up, or 6% split up, we gotta be willing to max it.
Yep.
The fixed rate would give you your hard number, you know, there's no questions there.
Yeah.
So happy with our leases that we have for equipment now, cars, backhoes, skid steer and stuff. Are those rates fixed, or are we looking at possible interest rate increases for those also?
I think they're already fixed when they were approved. They may change, so one year it's 4.5%, another year it could be 3.5%, but they're already established, because Sue will be able to pick up what our debt service is, how much we owe. She's already got that filled into our paperwork.
Well, and that's why our amount changes every year, is whatever the lease dollar is, not the cost of the vehicle, it's whatever the lease comes due that year. But I'm just trying to think ahead of what all increases we might be looking at, because doesn't our contract with Alliance come up in the next budget year?
Yeah, every year. It'll come up every year.
Right. And we're only fixed to a certain point?
We're capped at, it was either 1 to 3 or 2 to 4. 4? Okay, 2 to 4. So that would be the maximum amount, would be 4%.
And
They have
that's
not
not
brought it.
the total contract, that's over a section of the contract, right?
I think that's total contract.
That's total, I thought.
Yeah, we do a review, they'll come back with an amendment to the contract, and it'll reflect the percentage increase that they want to propose to the city. And then if you don't do it, it is a maximum of 4%. Usually they come in less than what that middle, whatever that range is.
In the past, but this year's different.
Yeah, they're looking at it like we're looking at it.
I bet they come in at 4%.
Still hear about it.
Just checking. It's expecting a response, but
I told him 3%, I don't know,
yeah.
that's most.
Oh, Ron left already, didn't he?
No easy answer. I'm sorry there isn't, with the crystal ball, I can tell you what the best choice is.
Hired you for.
Well, I've given you those choices.
I mean, of the percentage versus fixed, I lean fixed. The dollar here is suggested, or it's in this plan, if y'all want to adjust it. I'm open to the discussion. That's where I lean, is the fixed rate.
The reason I picked $1 was because
Yeah.
at the bottom end, you go over 8%, top end is not as much, but you would at least grab those that are the ones that are most affected, that have to buy the gasoline, have to buy groceries. We'll get them up.
But I guess we do have a couple of them.
Yeah, I mean, they're there.
3. What I consider 3, but that's part-time. Nope. 2 of them are part-time and 1's full-time of the lower end.
I mean, you can cut it down to 85 cents, you can cut it down to 75 cents, whatever you want to.
Here's a nickel, there's a nickel. Just kidding.
Didn't we used to have a former member here that used to say a quarter?
No, I've been there. I've gone 3 years without raises.
And
It happens.
It does happen. Yeah.
And then sometimes when you do get raised, it's a nickel here, or like when I was union, we didn't max more than a quarter a year, and it didn't matter what the economy was doing. It was fixed by our contract. So, I mean, these are tough decisions.
So Happy, in your previous lives, and I haven't asked this for a while, you had to be involved in a similar position through different economic conditions. So how did they react?
Same way. It was hard making the decision on what the raise should be. Most of the time I came back with a fixed amount, because it was just more palatable to a number of the board members. Some years there wasn't a raise, but that's because they went into a different level of loggers. So, there was a trade-off. There was still something the employees got, but it wasn't based on what the hourly wage was going to be.
And with that, I mean, talking about some of those other benefits, I think I had mentioned to you about, maybe eliminating certain holidays on the schedule, but allowing a floating holiday.
Right.
Like, for me personally, I think it's out of character for a government to offer Good Friday off, because it is a exclusively Christian holiday or observation day. But I think the employees might like a floating holiday, maybe in lieu of that. So you're not really taking away. It's still the same expense. Better benefits them, because also if you don't observe Good Friday, then take the day.
I've always
as
liked
part of your
floating
summer vacation
holidays
or something.
compared to, that way you can, in that particular case, if you want to observe it, you can. If you don't, you don't.
Right. And that's, and we don't have to, I wanted to get that list to you. Part of my performance review is to look at those. We can discuss those at a different time. But yeah, you're going to have those kind of benefits as well that you could be passing on to the employees. And that was one of the questions on the questionnaire. So what I brought to you is what was recommended from the questionnaire. These, not the amounts, but what you were requesting when you gave me the answers were, I'm thinking COLA, one person. I'm thinking flat raise, another person. and that ran that gamut. So these are the amounts that I think needed to be looked at to start with, and that's why I'm looking at getting that number tonight so we can put it into our overall spreadsheet.
You got any more
The amount that you're
tax
deciding
income
on isn't set in stone
reports
either,
since
right?
2017?
It's not set in stone. I mean, if they decide on the dollar, it's
The one that
not.
you
Because
had
it's still
asked,
changed to,
you had passed out copies
Sure, yeah.
in 2007.
But I mean, I have to have something to start
right.
start basing the budget.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Or if you look at a flat amount for the end of the fiscal year, what, $1 for the 40 hours a week for 52 weeks, that's $280, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you round that up a little bit, right? So you're not necessarily fighting over these percentages or
Right.
whatever, you know, maybe it's not, maybe you do $2,500 for your end of the year, right? So, I mean, there's other options there.
Right, that was a third suggestion. I have never done that before or been with a city that has, so that is not something I'm used to, but again,
Joe had this report done of basically our income from 2005 to 2017. Could we get that updated just to see, because what I'm looking at here is not good. You know, in 12 years, our income increased, went from $1,093,605 to $1,256,950.
is that sales tax? Is that all taxes? Is it
That's
general fund?
sales tax revenue.
Okay, so it is in your budget, or in the budget that you've adopted. It is in the paperwork in that. I'll get that. But it's in there as to what we've collected over the years. So we have it handy.
Yeah, just in a simple form for simple people.
It's not it won't be like that, but it will be a spreadsheet, yeah.
Okay.
So I hear us having great difficulty being able to come to any kind of a conclusion on that.
And
How do we resolve that? Maybe Sue could help us resolve that.
we can wait until the next meeting and discuss it. We have to have something so that we have it for the 18th. But it's going to delay me trying to put a budget together, so, and that's fine.
I mean, do we feel like we can get there tonight, or do we feel like we're just going to keep talking about that?
You know, that information of income is, how do you talk about anything unless you,
I don't disagree.
why balance your check if you're not going to look at the balance?
Maybe if I step out on a limb first and I say, hey, I'm going to advocate for a flat rate per hour.
Yeah.
Anybody with me? Or
That's
Do I need to answer?
$1?
Well, that's the other half of that. That's farther out on the limb. But
So what you're saying is, let's just narrow it down to what do we want to do?
Yeah,
In the
I
budget,
think
a flat rate? Okay, we start with flat rate. Now, do you want to do 50, 75, $1? We can do a breakdown of what those costs are. I don't think I need to keep giving, the breakdown of what everybody's going to earn, because it'll be 50 cents as opposed to $1, but I can give you what the totals would be.
That's what I was looking
Well, yeah, we can also multiply it by the number of employees you got on here, right?
Yeah, we don't have more than 17 on here, so it's 20. Anyway,
That's 17 full-time.
well, 17
How do you
full-time.
feel our salaries, and again, I'm going to ask it again, based on your previous history, do you feel our salaries for the positions that we have left here are in line?
I would want to do a salary survey and not even venture a guess, because I don't know this market and the influences that we have.
Well, I'm just asking from your history in the past.
But those
It's changed, though.
No, but they were based on, usually on salaries. We had salary surveys done to see if everybody balanced out. And then after I left Festus, they did the same thing. So we have not had a salary survey, so I don't know.
it's talent retention, so how many people have left? And that's the answer to your question. Your salaries are good until people leave in mass at a certain volume, and you pick a point where I'm comfortable with 10 people leaving. If that 11th person leaves, I have to adjust. I mean, I think that's your answer.
Well, we've got one now, and
And I think with any group, you're going to have some that are paid online, above line, below line, you know.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of all over the place.
But we have some long-term employees.
Yeah.
I mean, you're either happy or you're not happy enough to stay and you need to look. That's,
Or you get recruited away.
or yeah, absolutely.
So happy, have you gotten everything you need from us this evening?
Nope.
Not really.
Hold on just a second. It may not take that long, I don't know.
She's trying to say that kitchen chair is not comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sorry. So we'll bring that to the next meeting. And again, you got the list on some of the recommendations. Added employees.
I do have a question on that.
Yeah.
To Eric, this $20,000 additional salary and stuff, I guess basically an explanation of what that's for and...
Sure. So, do I need to come to the podium or is it necessary?
Well, Susie won't hear you from back.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I know that the property is in question, but there's an overage in the property. Our property is a percentage that is now taking in more money than we used for the initial raises that we gave. Before the survey had come out, my proposal was, so we went to trying to have 2 officers on around the clock, especially after the Pete incident. That was one of the things that he and his wife both asked me specifically, if we can not have a time that somebody's working by themselves, which we have done for decades and, you know, forever, however long this department has been here. Luckily that night we had 2 officers on, which was good, and we got the guy in custody. Since then, we have tried to post 2 people around the clock no matter what. Because of that, when we have a vacation, we have a sick, we have somebody out on training, we have some reason that a shift can't be covered, now we're burdening somebody with covering that shift so that we have somebody on around the clock, which has depleted our overtime.
Because they're getting overtime.
Yes, so we've depleted our overtime. We've depleted our staff because they're tired of working all the time. So this was to, when we were down with Pete and the other officer that got injured, we had discussed approving a part-time position or multiple part-time positions to help cover some of those. We've got 1 part-timer now, which was an officer that left and has stayed on to help us cover shifts when needed. So this would be to fund hiring a few part-timers to have on staff. That doesn't mean that they will always be used, but they would be used before our full-time staff to avoid burnout and overtime.
Right.
But this may pay for itself, just, and not spending as much overtime.
As much overtime.
Right.
I think it'll pay for itself in not burning out our staff, but also.
Correct.
So how many hours, I mean, is a typical normal work week for you guys?
It depends. So on the long week, they'll work Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which would be 24, 48, 60 hours. On their short week, they work 24 hours. So in a pay period, they work 171 hours a pay period.
Okay, but that's still only like 42 hours of normal.
Again, it staggers every other week. So on their long week, they'll work Monday, Tuesday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a 12-hour shift. So then the opposite week, they only work Wednesday, Thursday. So it's averaged out between the 2 weeks in the pay period. So on their long week, they're working 60 hours plus whatever they stay over. And then if they are budgeted for an additional shift, because we're trying to keep the 2 on, then it could be 72 hours a week or more.
So now we have 2 officers around the clock.
That's what we try for, and that includes admin staff too. I mean, we come out, I've worked almost every day for the last 2 weeks, worked a 12-hour shift, so.
For a period of time, you only had 2 hours on, or 2 officers, certain hours?
For a while, we would stagger on, so excluding administrative staff, we'd have an officer come out we were working 7 to 7 at the time. 7 to 7, a supervisor would come out at noon or 2 o'clock, so from, like on a weekend, from 7 a.m. until noon or 2, whenever that supervisor came out, we had 1 officer on. And then we had 2 on because the supervisor was there. The day shift officer would go off at 7, and a night shift officer would come on at 7, and we'd have 2 on until 2 a.m. when the supervisor went off, and then we'd have 1 on by himself from 2 a.m. until 7 a.m.
So the real burden of our people is keeping the 2 on all the time.
Yes, but I think now, and this isn't televised, I'm assuming, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay, then some of this we probably should discuss in closed session because I don't want to advertise all of our scheduling when we have people on and don't have people on. But, you know, I certainly think that we stand the position or the possibility of opening ourselves up to liability now if somebody gets hurt because we've backed back down to having only one officer on.
Right.
You know, when we've already had a major attack on an officer that resulted in months and months and months.
I apologize for bringing that up.
I believe.
You know, but also in adding a part-time officer or officers and stuff, they each now have their own car.
No, we wouldn't buy additional cars. I mean, they would use the vehicles that are here.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to get the whole picture and
we
stuff.
wouldn't look at adding, I mean, we would need to add additional equipment, you know, uniforms and you know, we have a few extra sidearms that we have, but all the patrol rifles and everything, they would be qualified on that, and we wouldn't have to buy additional.
Right. So the 20,000 you think would
It would just be salary. It would just be, and then we would limit it to less than the 30 hours a week, so they're not getting benefits, they're not getting overtime or anything like that. You know, it would just strictly be an hourly rate.
So with the staffing issues that's going on, I mean, you see that's pretty easy to find somebody, or? We hope.
No, I mean, the issues that we have are we're the only department in the city other than the sheriff's department. You know, St. Francis County, a lot of those use part-timers because there's 13 municipalities in the city, so somebody from Park Hills might come over and work part-time in Deloge on their days off. We don't have any other municipalities to pull from here. I mean, you have to be driving to St. Genevieve to get to St. Genevieve. So, I mean, it would be something that I think potentially a part-time position could be more attractive to somebody than a full-time position because we may not pay as much as some other department, but somebody that's looking for part-time work or secondary work may be more inclined to come down here knowing that, you know, it's just going to be to fill in a shift a week or, you know, PRN or whatever. And I guess to address a couple of things, you know, the employees that have family or dependents on their insurance, under the current plan, our plan is going to step up to where the employee is paying up to 40% of the insurance. That would be the employee's portion. We're not at that right now, so the $300 cap isn't really going to affect us until we get to that 40%. I was just trying to be proactive and get that in place before we get to the 40% and people are paying $600 out of pocket or whatever. We're just trying to stay somewhat competitive with the sheriff's department, who still pays more than we do hourly for their officers. I was just trying to keep, and so that's why I made that suggestion in the employee, or in the insurance committee.
And how many part-time officers would you be hoping?
I mean, we could have 10 on staff. That doesn't mean we use 10 all the time. It just, you have a pool of people that should you need a position, because we'd only be filling one shift or what, you know, however many shifts we need to cover at that time, and we'd have 5 people or 10 people that we could go down a list and say, hey, this shift is open, who wants it, you know, and have somebody more so than dedicating somebody, you know, you're working every Wednesday or you're working every Thursday, you know, because it may not work into their...
You might go a week or two and not even have to.
You might go a month without having to use anybody. But when you do have to, then, you know, it would avoid people getting 20, 30 hours of overtime on a pay period.
So that around $20,000 additional salary, that is for it as a whole for the year, regardless of how many people are, okay.
How many hours would that give us?
It depends on what we pay them, but it would be, you know, if we paid them $20 an hour, then it would get us 100 hours.
Yeah.
So, so that was, and again, when I proposed this, none of the Prop B thing was in contest yet. So the overs that we were taking, my vision was the tax that already supports this very thing would just cover that aspect of it. I mean, it was sold as a law enforcement sale or a law enforcement property tax to cover salary. So,
Yeah.
any other questions?
So we had that, we had the fire chiefs wanting to go to 24 hours. We'll bring that, we'll put it in the budget. You can decide on the 18th whether you want to include that or not. And also $100,000 moved out of general fund into the projects for the capital projects fund. We did that last year. It's $650,000 total. We're at 325 is what we're reducing, so we're down to 225 at this point. So it would be another 100,000 that would come off. We move it to capital projects. I would ask you to consider maybe moving that to park. Let the park people have a little money to do some stuff up by the big pavilion. They want to put playground equipment and do things. That would be a capital improvement. And I think it would be a good use for that.
So aren't we giving them their cell tower money?
Yeah, all.
It's like $11,000.
Yeah, $11,000. I mean, that doesn't pay for playground equipment. Playground equipment with a safe pad to land on is going to run you $50,000 to $75,000.
Oh, it's going to be more than that.
Okay, it's going to be more than that.
It's, so when you're talking about playground equipment, they've been mulching. Honestly, I don't think our mulch is actually up to the standards of fall safe, because it is a particular type of a mulch, but that's neither here nor there. So when we talk about doing new playgrounds, you really want to consider the fall zone and the material you're using there, right? Because if you do mulch, you're weeding, all that stuff. You do pour in place, it's going to cost you a lot. You got to have certain bases under it, same with the tiles. But with those, it becomes a lower maintenance thing, right? So your playground might only cost, one of them that we've been looking at for up by the pavilion is like $26,000 for the equipment, right? You're looking at install, you can maybe install it yourself, but you still have to pay to have somebody kind of from the company guide you on the install, so you're paying for those charges. And then when you look at adding in the, even a tile, like a rubberized tile for your surfacing, a $26,000 playground becomes at minimum $75,000. But you're likely looking closer to 100. So, I mean, it's just what and then we also have to look at the difference in grade and stuff like that. So we're really kind of stuck on a lot of projects in the park right now until the trail section gets in. But it's really hard to plan numbers-wise where we can go with anything in the park, because bake sales don't cut it.
Yeah, we budget out of general fund into the park to make up for the deficit, and it's just, usually it's going to be $11,000 for the tower, plus maybe $10,000 extra. So there's not much you can do equipment-wise. So anyway, just a thought while I was working through it. Otherwise, I will bring you some numbers at the next meeting.
I could support that. I'd like to see that bathroom get some love, though.
The bathroom already has $160,000 dedicated from ARPA, and that's not this budget year, that's next budget year.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's already in there. I'm looking at, or you can spend it, they could spend it and fix up the pavilion, make it a beautiful, put in some new cookers, whatever they're called, grills. They can paint the place. We're going to get we've got tables already figured into the budget for this next year. So, I mean, there's a number of things that could also go to improve that facility.
And by focusing in that area, you make it an actual usable space for the community, because right now there's not a full usable space for family-wise. So it could probably, it's not going to generate a lot of money, but you get that area fixed up, the rental will increase on that. I don't know how many people have rented it for this year. During COVID, a lot of people rented it because they were searching for outdoor space, but it was just not accommodating. But it's $50 for a city resident, I think, and then I think it's $100 for out of town.
Most of the time, though, if you just show up, it isn't rented that often, so people just show up and they lay claim to it, and that's allowed by our.
But the grad parties and stuff, people do like it, but it's just not that great.
Right, then they don't have to pay.
They pay nothing.
Yeah. Good basketball.
Yeah, but for graduation parties or small things.
Okay, is there any other business?
Just get out of here.
Sorry, I'm having some connection issues, but I'm going to assume that's a no. With that, I'm going to adjourn this work session. Thank you.
Thank you.